Mara had always been good at starting things. Journals with 3 filled pages, workout routines abandoned after a week, a crochet scarf tangled permanently in her closet. Her life was a string of almosts. Witchcraft, however, felt different. At least, she hoped it did. On her desk sat the proof of her commitment. A cluttered altar of sorts. Candles from Dollar Tree, 1 pumpkin spice, 1 unscented because purity of intent, according to the witchy TikTok she'd watched. A bundle of sage that smelled more like burnt popcorn than cleansing smoke. Crystals she couldn't pronounce. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. And tonight, she told herself, she was going to be more than a wannabe witch with a Pinterest board and a collection of half-burnt candles. Tonight, she whispered, leaning back in her chair, I prove I'm real. Her cat, Binks, flicked his tail at her from the bed, unimpressed. Mara ignored him. She had a plan. Halloween was special. Every source she'd read, blogs, videos, even the half-baked forum posts with black backgrounds and neon green text, insisted the same thing. On Halloween, the veil between worlds was at its thinnest. Spirits lingered, magic hummed, the unseen pressed just a little closer. And what better time to test her power than when the universe was practically asking for it? The only problem, she didn't really know what she was doing. The little beginner spells, herbs and tea for confidence, writing wishes on bay leaves and burning them, had been fun but unimpressive. Nothing had really worked, at least, not in the spark awe in your soul, shiver up your spine way she imagined magic should. That was why she'd gone further. On an obscure online marketplace, sandwiched between tarot cards and plastic vampire fangs, she'd found a book, The Black Veil, Invocations of the Shadow Gate. It wasn't pretty. The leather was cracked, the title etched in jagged letters that looked handwritten. No author, no publisher. The description simply read, authentic. Not responsible for outcomes. Authentic. Not responsible. Mara had nearly snorted her coffee at that, but the longer she stared at it, the more her gut whispered yes. 2 weeks later, it had arrived on her doorstep. And now it sat on her altar, heavy and foreboding. Mara traced the cover with her fingertips. This is it, she said, mostly to convince herself. Her friends were out at a costume party, texting her pictures of glittery vampire makeup and red solo cups. But Mara had chosen differently. She wasn't going to waste Halloween on cheap beer and awkward dance circles. She was going to make contact. She flipped the book open. The pages smelled like damp basements and candle wax. Symbols she didn't recognize spiraled around jagged text. Some words were smudged, but one page called to her. Her eyes kept being drawn back to it no matter how many times she flipped away. To call the guide across the veil. The description promised knowledge, strength, a voice to lead the lost witch on her path. It was everything she wanted. Validation, proof, direction. Her heart thudded in her chest. She glanced at Binks, who was now licking his paw, completely uninterested in the fate of his witch. Fine, don't help, she muttered. She gathered her supplies. Salt for a circle, candles for the 4 directions, a bowl of water, and a rusty kitchen knife to prick her finger, because of course there was blood involved. That meant this was real. Right? Mara checked the time. 10:47 p.m. Perfect. The spell would take a while. And by midnight, she'd either have her guide or she'd have embarrassed herself alone in her apartment while her cat judged her. Still, as she lit the candles and the shadows stretched across her room, a tingle of something stirred in the air. For the first time, she wondered, what if this actually worked? The thing about old books is they look innocent enough until you start reading them out loud. Mara stared at the page again, the curling symbols that looked like someone had doodled while possessed. The instructions were written in jagged English, like the author hadn't been fully invested in human handwriting at the time. It read, on All Hallows Eve, as the veil wears thin, draw the circle of true sight. Within, place fire, water, breath, and blood. Speak the call, and a guide shall answer. Do not falter. Do not fear. Do not stray. Mara chewed on her lip. Do not stray, she repeated. Vague much? Binks gave her a flat look. She ignored him and started prepping her circle. Salt on the hardwood floor. Thin, shaky lines because her Dollar Tree box didn't pour evenly. A bowl of water on the east side, candles for north, incense for air in the west, and her rusty knife ready in the south. She stepped back to look at her handiwork. Yeah, she said, nodding. Totally Pinterest-worthy. The book didn't say anything about aesthetics, though. It just said intent mattered. And her intent? Oh, it was practically vibrating. She wanted this more than anything. The next step, the call. The words were there on the page, all harsh consonants and twisted vowels. Mara had no idea what language it was. Maybe Latin's evil cousin? But it looked powerful. She licked her lips, heart hammering. All right, let's do this. Her voice trembled as she spoke the first line. The sound came out too soft, so she tried again, louder. The syllables scraped in her throat like broken glass, unnatural but right. The air seemed to shiver. She spoke the second line. The candle flames leaned toward her, though there was no draft. The third line. Shadows stretched, curling at the edges of her vision. Binks hissed, tail puffing like a bottle brush. Mara faltered. Her mouth went dry. It's okay, it's fine, she whispered, more to herself than the cat. It's supposed to do that. She pressed on, her voice steadying as she reached the final line. The words left her lips like smoke, thick and heavy. The room went silent. Every hum, every creak, even the distant laughter of trick-or-treaters outside, gone. The candle flames shot straight up, tall as her arm. The bowl of water rippled though she hadn't touched it. And then, a sound. Not outside, not in her head, through her. A low, echoing chuckle. Her skin prickled. She spun around, but the room was empty. Shadows clung stubbornly to the corners. Mara, her name, whispered like silk, from nowhere. She stumbled back, nearly kicking over the salt circle. Who's there? The chuckle again, closer now. You called. I answered. Her pulse thundered in her ears. This was it. This was proof. This was real. And also she realized with a sinking gut, probably a mistake. Mara's breath fogged in the air. Her apartment wasn't cold a moment ago, but now her skin prickled like she'd stepped into a walk-in freezer. The candles should have been warming the room, but their flames stretched tall and thin, pale instead of golden. Mara. The voice unfurled again, curling through her bones. She swallowed hard. You're the guide? She asked. A laugh, soft, amused, and much too close. Her gaze darted to the mirror above her dresser. For a split second, her reflection didn't move when she did. Mara gasped and looked away, heart hammering. Okay, she whispered to herself. It's just the spell. It's supposed to look scary. That's how you know it's working. Right? Binks disagreed. He yowled and bolted under the bed, tail lashing like a whip. Shadows crawled along the edges of the circle, pressing inward, just barely grazing the salt line. The air thrummed like a bass note only her body could hear. Something brushed her ear. No breath, no touch, just the awareness of presence. Such longing, the voice murmured, each word soaked in dark honey. Such hunger. You begged for me, little witch. Mara's throat closed up. She forced herself to speak. I asked for guidance. Guidance. The word stretched unnaturally, like it was being tasted. Yes. And so I come. The flames flickered higher. One of the candles sputtered, guttering dangerously low. Mara's instincts screamed at her. End it, stop now, close the book. But her pride, the thing that had carried her this far, held her frozen in place. She wanted this too much. Taking a shaky breath, she looked at the page again. There was no end spell instruction, no gentle wrap-up. Just the call. Hello, she said finally. If you're my guide, show yourself. Silence. Then, footsteps. Not outside. Not from a neighbor. Inside her circle. The salt hissed faintly as though something heavy pressed against it. The air carried the faint smell of smoke. Or was it rot? She couldn't tell. Mara's chest constricted. She fought the urge to back away. You're not supposed to be here, she said, trying to sound firm. You're supposed to guide me. Not this. A pause. Then, in that same silken voice. Do you know what happens when you call across on All Hallows Eve, little witch? Her pulse stuttered. The veil is thin. A sound like teeth clicking together, sharp and amused. Yes. The door is open. And what steps through is not always what you asked for. Her stomach dropped. The shadows quivered, and for an instant, she saw them. Eyes. Dozens. Watching her from the dark corners of her own apartment. Mara squeezed her eyes shut. This isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't. A whisper, inside her mind this time, cut her off. Oh, Mara. It's more real than anything you've ever believed. The room bent. There was no sudden shift, no obvious motion. But the walls felt closer, the ceiling too high, her floor unsteady like she stood on the skin of a drum that someone was about to strike. The salt circle hissed again. Then something pressed down, like an invisible hand resting on her shoulders. She stumbled, barely catching herself before knocking over a candle. Show yourself, she whispered. The shadows listened. They moved. Her lamp in the corner flickered, buzzing loud enough to rattle her teeth. Every surface of her apartment seemed to blur, like she was seeing through water. And then she saw it. A shape stretched itself free from the farthest corner of the room. It didn't crawl, didn't walk. It unfolded, joints bending in ways that weren't joints, limbs stretching too long before snapping back into place. Mara clamped her hand over her mouth. It was not human. It was not animal. It was something else. For one nauseating heartbeat, it wore a human outline. Tall, faceless, shoulders hunched. Then the shape shivered, its head splitting into too many angles, a grin where no grin should be. The smile widened. You see me now. Her skin iced over. The salt circle flared as the thing pressed close to it. Not breaking the line, but leaning against it, testing. Its shape flickered like static. 1 second shadow, the next nearly solid, as though reality couldn't decide if it should exist here or not. Mara forced herself to stand taller. Her knees wanted to buckle, her instincts screamed at her to run, but she made her voice work anyway. I called for a guide. The shadow's grin stretched wider, splitting up its cheek, showing too many teeth, none aligned, all sharp. And I came. Its voice was still silk, but silk pulled taut over something sharp, like the edge of a blade hidden in fabric. What are you? She whispered. It tilted its head, too far, neck bending until it popped. The smile never faltered. I am what waits on the other side of doors you should not open. The lights went out. For a full breath, Mara was swallowed by darkness, pure and absolute. She could hear only the rasp of her own breath, the frantic pounding of her heart. When the lights flickered back on, the figure was crouched right in front of her, nose inches from the salt line, grinning. Shall we begin? Mara's throat locked. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe, couldn't even blink. The thing crouched at the edge of the salt line like a child peering through a window. Its grin was too wide, its teeth too many, and behind its shape, the air rippled as though the whole world was fabric tugged taut. The salt sizzled under its weight, smoking faintly. Mara stumbled back a step, clutching the grimoire against her chest like it could shield her. Stay back. The creature tilted its head, grin flickering wider, narrower, wider again. Like a bad signal trying to settle. I can't come in. Not yet. The words purred through the air, layered, as though more than one mouth spoke at once. But the door is open, little witch. The door is open, and things are slipping through. As if on cue, a sound rose from the street outside. Children laughing. But it wasn't right. The laughter bent wrong, too shrill, overlapping in strange ways, like recordings played backward. Mara crept toward the window and peeked through the blinds. Her stomach dropped. Trick-or-treaters still filled the sidewalk, but they weren't moving right. Groups of kids in costumes shuffled in perfect unison, their heads all turning at the same angle, the same time. Their voices rose together in a single warped note of laughter that scraped against her nerves like glass. One child, a tiny witch with a floppy hat, lifted her face toward Mara's window. The mask slipped, not fell, slipped, like skin melting, sliding sideways. Beneath was nothing but black void where eyes and mouth should be. Mara staggered back, slamming the blinds shut. The creature chuckled, the sound vibrating the very walls. See what you've done. See what you've let in. Her chest heaved. I didn't mean to. I was just hungry, the voice finished. So desperate to be more than you are. So eager to open doors you could not close. The mirror on her dresser cracked with a sharp snap. Her reflection moved on its own. It smiled at her. Her face, her eyes, but the grin was identical to the creature's. Too wide, too sharp, stretching past what a human mouth could do. Stop it, Mara screamed. She grabbed the nearest candle and hurled it at the mirror. Glass shattered across the floor, sparks hissing out. The reflection's smile lingered in the shards for one long, awful second before fading. From the corner of her eye, Mara saw the shadow figure rise to its full, terrible height. Its head brushed the ceiling, shoulders scraping against walls that seemed to bend around it. You called, it whispered, voice thick and heavy as oil. Now you will listen. The candles guttered out all at once. Darkness swallowed her, and in that dark, dozens of whispers began, rising, falling, all in her own voice, each one speaking her fears back at her. Failure. Fraud. Alone. Mara dropped to her knees, hands clamped over her ears. Stop it. Stop. But the whispers only grew louder. The whispers clawed at her skull. Fraud. Pretender. Weak. Nothing. Mara's whole body trembled as she knelt in the circle, palms pressed to her ears. She wanted to curl up and disappear, but another part of her, the part that had dragged her here tonight, the part that was tired of being almost, flared hot in her chest. No, she rasped, forcing the word past her dry throat. No, you don't get to call me that. The whispers only laughed. Her eyes darted to the grimoire, lying open on the floor. She lunged for it, skimming the pages with frantic hands. There has to be something. Something to push it back. Her vision blurred, but there, scrawled in jagged ink, banishment of lesser spirits. It wasn't meant for this, she knew that. But she had nothing else. Mara scraped together the tools still unbroken, the bowl of water, the knife, one flickering candle that hadn't gone out. She steadied her breath, raised the knife, and whispered the words. The syllables caught in her throat, strange and metallic, but the flame jumped higher, and for the first time since the thing arrived, the shadows recoiled. Her heart leapt. It was working. By salt and flame, I cast you out, she cried, louder this time. The whispers faltered, the air trembled, and then the creature laughed. It was a low, rolling sound that shook the walls. The shadows surged forward, battering against the salt line like waves against stone. Little witch, it purred. That trick is for scraps. Do you think I am lesser? The knife in her hand shuddered violently and snapped in two. The candle guttered, sputtered, and died. The salt circle scattered as though a great breath had blown across it. Mara's stomach dropped. Her only barrier, gone. The shadow surged forward, spilling into the circle like a flood of ink. It coiled around her ankles, cold and wet, tugging her toward the center. She screamed, kicking wildly, scrambling backward across the floor. Her hands landed on shards of glass from the broken mirror, slicing her palm open. Blood dripped across the floorboards, sharp and hot. The creature inhaled, slow and delighted. Yes, it whispered, that will do. The blood spread along the cracks in the wood, tracing lines she hadn't carved, forming symbols that pulsed with dark light. The apartment itself seemed to breathe, walls groaning, floor trembling. Mara staggered to her feet, clutching her bleeding hand to her chest. Panic surged, but she refused to collapse. You're not taking me, she spat, voice shaking but loud. The shadow paused. Its grin split wider, teeth gleaming like bone. Not yet, it murmured. Outside, the laughter of children rose again, high, shrill, wrong. Every window rattled in its frame. And somewhere deep inside her apartment, behind the closet door she hadn't opened in weeks, something knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. The knocking echoed through her apartment, steady and patient. Mara pressed her back against the wall, chest heaving, blood dripping down her palm. The shadows still writhed around her, licking the floor, coiling up the walls, but they hadn't swallowed her whole. Yet, she had seconds, maybe. Her eyes fell back to the grimoire. Pages fluttered on their own, as though unseen fingers turned them, faster and faster until they stopped at a chapter marked with a jagged symbol. Rite of Severance. Her stomach twisted. Even the title felt dangerous. The words swam before her eyes, but she forced herself to read. To close what should not be open, blood must bind the line. Burn that which invited, cast away what you most desire, and seal with fire. Mara's heart dropped. She knew what it meant. She would have to destroy the grimoire. The only thing that had made her feel like she was really on this path. The thing that promised her answers, power, proof. No, she whispered. No, I can't. The knocking grew louder. The closet door rattled on its hinges. The creature loomed taller, head nearly brushing the ceiling. Its grin split its face in two. You cannot close the door. It is mine now. Mara staggered toward her altar. She grabbed what remained of her candles, her lighter, the broken knife. Her fingers shook as she set the grimoire in the center. Her blood smeared across the page, soaking the words. The shadows hissed. She struck the lighter. The tiny flame sputtered, weak, but it was enough to make the entity recoil. Burn it, it hissed. Burn your hope, burn your hunger, and still I will remain. Mara swallowed hard, her throat raw. She raised the lighter over the book. Her whole body screamed at her not to do it. This book was her only tie to magic, her only proof she wasn't just some girl pretending. Without it, she would have nothing but tea candles and doubts. But if she didn't, the closet door boomed open. Darkness spilled from it like water, cold and endless. Something huge shifted inside. Mara's hand shook as she whispered, I'm not nothing. And she dropped the flame. The grimoire caught instantly, pages curling, ink bleeding red-black smoke. The fire flared brighter than it should have, white-hot, lighting every shadowed corner of the room. The entity screamed, not in pain, in rage. The walls rattled, the windows cracked, the apartment howled with wind that had no source. Mara clung to the burning book, chanting the words on the page even as they turned to ash under her fingers. Blood must bind the line. Burn what I desired, seal with fire. Her voice shook, but she forced the words again and again, louder, stronger. The fire spread, racing in a circle around her, searing through the shadows like sunlight. The closet slammed shut with a thunderous crack. The knocking stopped. The creature howled, its form unraveling, its grin breaking apart into jagged fragments of light and smoke. Mara screamed with it, pouring everything she had into the last words of the chant. And then, silence. The fire died, leaving only smoke and ash. The grimoire was gone. Mara collapsed to her knees, chest heaving, palm stinging. The apartment was wrecked. Mirrors shattered, candles toppled, salt scattered. But the shadows were gone. For now. The smoke curled upward in the stillness, acrid and heavy. Mara stayed on her knees, chest heaving, her bleeding hand pressed to the floor for balance. The grimoire was nothing but a heap of blackened ash, the last page still glowing faintly red before crumbling away. She thought, hoped, it was over. Then the laughter returned, low, rumbling, filling the air, vibrating through her ribs. Her head snapped up. The shadow still lingered, stretched thin against the walls like tar. It was weaker, flickering, but it hadn't gone. You think fire can unmake me? It snarled, voice distorted now, rougher, layered with static. I was here long before your kind scribbled symbols on paper. I will be here long after. The lights overhead shattered, glass raining down. The shadow surged, reforming, pulling itself back together. It rose taller than ever, its grin jagged and broken but still there. Mara staggered to her feet. No, she said hoarsely. You don't get to stay. Not here, not with me. The grin widened, splitting all the way across its face. You called me. You fed me. You were mine. The air pressed down heavy, suffocating. Her lungs burned. Mara looked around desperately. Nothing left of her altar. No book. No tools. Only her. Her blood smeared the floor where she'd cut her hand. She bent down, scooping ash from the ruined grimoire. Her palms shook as she dragged the blood and ash together, scrawling clumsy symbols across the floorboards. She didn't know if they were right. She didn't care. This is my space, she said, voice cracking but steadying with every word. My home. My circle. My will. The shadow snarled, pressing closer, its teeth dripping darkness that hissed against the floor. You are nothing. Mara's voice rose, fierce and raw. Then nothing is what will destroy you. She slammed her hand down on the bloody symbol. The floor flared white. The shadow recoiled, screaming. A horrible, ear-splitting sound that rattled every bone in her body. Its grin fractured, splitting into shards of darkness that spiraled away. Its limbs stretched too far, unraveling like threads tugged loose. Mara screamed too, pouring every scrap of rage, fear, desperation, and stubbornness she had into that mark on the floor. You don't own me. You don't own anything. The white light blazed brighter, filling every corner of the apartment. The shadow clawed upward, trying to hold on, fingers scraping gouges into the ceiling that smoked and bled tar. Its voice twisted into a shriek, Halloween is mine. And then it tore apart, dissolving into black smoke sucked back through cracks in the air that sealed with a violent snap. The silence was deafening. Mara collapsed, the bloody ash smear burning faintly under her palm before fading. Her ears rang, her throat raw, her whole body trembling. The entity was gone. This time, she knew it was gone. But the last echo of its laugh still lingered in her skull. The apartment was silent. Mara sat slumped against the wall, head tipped back, chest still heaving. Every muscle trembled, her cut hands sticky with blood and ash. She listened. No whispering, no laughter, no scratching in the dark. Just silence. Her eyes fluttered shut, tears hot and heavy spilling down her cheeks. She was alive. She had survived it. A shaky laugh bubbled out of her. Holy crap, I actually did it. She dragged herself up, limbs stiff, and stumbled toward the window. Outside, the city was its usual self. Cars passing, neon signs glowing, the faint echo of Halloween revelers still drifting through the night. The world had kept turning. Maybe she could too. She turned back toward the mess of her apartment. Burnt pages, broken glass, salt scattered like snow, the floorboards scarred with symbols she barely remembered making. She would clean it in the morning. Maybe she'd sage the place. Her body screamed for rest, but her mind clung to one thought. It was over. And then, knock, knock, knock. Her head snapped toward the closet. No, it couldn't be. The door stood closed, perfectly ordinary. Knock, 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 louder. The color drained from her face. She stumbled backward, shaking her head. No, 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 you're gone. I banished you. The knocking rattled the door this time, hard enough that the frame shuddered. Her breath came in panicked gasps. She had nothing left to fight with. No grimoire, no ritual, not even enough strength left to draw another symbol. All she could do was stand frozen, staring. The knocking stopped. The silence stretched. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice whispered, soft, almost playful. Trick or treat? The light bulb above her flickered once. Twice. Then burned out, plunging her into darkness. The closet door rattled again, a tremor rolling through the wood like something enormous pressing against it. Mara staggered back until her shoulders hit the wall. Her body screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere left to go. No, she whispered, voice raw. Not again. The knob began to twist. Slow, deliberate. Her gaze darted to the floor. Blood still smeared, ash scattered, broken shards of her ritual tools strewn everywhere. And there, lying crooked against the baseboard, was the candle that had gone out. Shaking, she crawled to it, striking a lighter with trembling fingers. The tiny flame sputtered alive. She pressed the candle to the blood mark she'd scrawled earlier, smearing it into a crude circle. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out anyway. Half memory, half invention, spoken with every ounce of will she had left. This door is mine. This space is mine. By blood and fire, I bind what lingers. You don't pass. Not ever again. The knob jerked harder, rattling wildly now. The door shook so violently dust rained from the ceiling. Mara screamed the last words. I seal you out. The flame blazed white, a searing flash that carved across the apartment. The symbols on the floor flared one last time, then locked in place, glowing like molten iron. The closet door slammed with a deafening boom. Silence. Not the watchful silence of before, but heavy, final, like a lid snapping shut. The air lightened, the pressure lifting from her chest. The flame dimmed back to its soft orange glow. Mara stayed frozen, candle clutched to her chest, staring at the quiet door. No knocking, no whispers, no voice, just stillness. Her knees gave out. She crumpled to the floor, sobs shaking her. Not of terror this time, but release. It was over. Truly over. For the first time all night, she believed it. Outside, the last of the trick-or-treaters laughed their way home, and somewhere a clock struck midnight. Halloween was done. The veil would thicken again. Mara sat in the wreckage of her apartment, bruised, bloodied, and exhausted. But alive. And though she didn't know if she'd ever touch magic again, she knew one thing for certain. She would never open that door. Not for anyone. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe for more haunting tales, and ring the bell so you never miss a scare. After all, you never know what's waiting behind the next door.